One other thing that I will share with you today, I ended up writing something for today, even though even though I wasn't on deck to create another presentation. I still ended up writing something. This is still in its rough stages. I could see myself, though, maybe polishing it up and putting it out there as a blog post. So right now, this article is called Owning It. Former CD Baby founder Derek Sivers has been featured on an array of podcasts. Having transitioned from a music career to a business owner, to a TED Talk speaker, and now an author, Derek may have set a foundation for himself in the music business, but ultimately adapted to whatever his goals and his life required of him. Touring, coding, writing, parenting, and probably a whole lot of other things I don't know about because I'm not Derek. In listening to him share on various podcasts, there was one podcast in particular that I felt I would be a great guest for, so I reached out to the host. I got a response from her, and while I don't remember exactly what she said, what I got from her response was basically this: if you want to be on my show, your answers to questions can't be spontaneous. They have to be predictable and polished, almost as if an actor memorizing and reciting their lines. I stopped to think about that and wondered to myself whether I was in any way unpolished or unfocused. People often praise me for being a great communicator and podcast host, so for me, there was a decided disconnect in her response. I also wondered why she couldn't just send me her questions in advance so that I could practice my answers and have the podcast episode unfold like a play in a theater, if that's what she so desperately wanted. But the irony of the situation didn't escape me. Depending on what question you asked Derek at what time, he would give you completely different answers. Why wouldn't he? He's constantly reading, growing, and challenging himself. He's a great communicator, no doubt, but is his every answer rehearsed? I don't think so. I thought more and more about this, how in anything mainstream or commercial it's expected that you only do one thing and you are supposed to be known for that one thing. Billy Mays, pitchman. Phil Swift, the flex tape guy. Bob Saget, Danny Tanner. Yet, as I began thinking more on this, I couldn't help but notice the many exceptions to the so-called rule. Even the people I just mentioned in a certain light are known for or are remembered for other things, even if they are mostly iconic for just one thing. Why do we have so many misgivings about people wanting to evolve, try different things? I know, you don't go to a Bob Dylan concert expecting him to play the keyboard rather than the guitar. You don't go to a Neil Young concert hoping to hear just the new stuff. Come on, Neil, we need some rockin' in the free world. But is it so bad that we change as people? Yes, it can be uncomfortable, both for us and for others. It can be difficult to give up the image or picture you've held of someone for so long. Dealing with a social chameleon can be taxing on our mental faculties and processes in a world where shorthand, simplification, and categorization are the norm. There's no more room for another factoid when we're full up with doom-scrolling, empty, and unrewarding social media content. But I want to make the argument that expecting people to show up exactly the way they have always shown up is to go against their wiring, and it can even be taxing, both for them and for you. Think of Michael Jordan. The carefully crafted good guy image was shattered once and for all after everyone learned about his, and let's be honest, mostly innocuous and harmless gambling habits. If people are free and are allowed to be free, they naturally progress through life, adapting, changing, and evolving. Their curiosity takes them different places. They are not bound by the preconceptions of others, societal norms, pressures from parents or parental figures, the never-ending list of expectations that constrict and restrict the natural unfolding of an individual. The unfolding that, on the rails of expectation, is inevitably stifled by the need to make a living, put food on the table, and care for the needs of their families. They say Steve Jobs' study of calligraphy is what ultimately led him to pay careful attention to the fonts that would be used on early renditions of the Macintosh operating system. Yet when you stop and think about it, it's such a long walk for a short drink. Jobs must have gotten more out of calligraphy than a mere font. Stagnancy and consistency is not the natural way of the world, because change is. If you like showing up the same way every day, and that's exactly who you are, and you find it rewarding and fulfilling, then don't let me talk you out of it. But for many, the pressure to remain the same is like a structure of imprisonment, erected for the sole purpose of survival, rather than the goal we are all striving for: freedom, fulfillment, something one might call thriving. Maybe the difference between someone who shows up differently and gets away with it, and the person who doesn't, is the person who doesn't hasn't fully owned who they are.